When the engineering team began digging the tunnel, at one point, water hidden inside the mountain started flooding into the tunnel at jet pressure, creating a flood-like situation. The Gotthard Base Tunnel in Switzerland is also called the Mount Everest of the engineering world. At 57 kilometers long, this is not only the world's longest tunnel, but also the deepest tunnel in the world, built at a depth of 2.5 kilometers. Why had this tunnel become a necessity for all of Europe? How did the engineering team solve the problems of falling rocks inside the mountain, rapidly flowing water, and the wind strong enough to shatter the train's windows?
Welcome once again to Tailsilo Videos.
Viewers, if you look closely at the map of Europe, you'll see a wall of mountains right in the middle that has been a barrier to trade and travel for years. This wall of mountains is called the Alps. For centuries, people traveled over these mountains on long zigzag routes, while snow or avalanches could block the way at any moment. Bridges were built on these mountains, and railway tracks were extended, but climbing the steep slopes by train was still very difficult and time-consuming. Then, over time, another major problem arose. To boost Europe's economy and to transport more goods from one country to another, the need had now far surpassed these zigzag routes. The factories of Northern Europe and the seaports of Southern Europe both depended on each other. To solve this problem, engineers had only two options. Either they could build even more difficult and wider roads over the mountains, or they could attempt something that had been considered impossible for centuries. They decided that instead of going over the mountain, they would carve a tunnel right through its center, one that would become the longest and deepest tunnel in the world. But as easy as this mission sounds, in reality, it was just as terrifying. So deep underground, where the weight of the mountain could tear through any steel wall like it was paper. The engineers knew they weren't just up against dirt and rocks, but against forces in nature that had never been challenged before. The construction of the Gotthard Base Tunnel wasn't just any ordinary construction project. Its biggest enemy was the extreme pressure, because this tunnel had to be dug under a mountain 2,500 meters high, which meant that the tunnel walls would constantly be under the weight of millions of tons from the mountain above. To experience this pressure firsthand, the engineers first tried digging a small tunnel, but the mountain's pressure started to close the tunnel back up. But that was just the beginning. The second major challenge was the extreme heat. Whether it's the earth or a mountain, at such depths, the temperature can easily reach 50 degrees Celsius. In such intense heat, a person can't work for more than 15 to 20 minutes. And if the cooling system fails, this tunnel could turn into a living grave for the workers. After pressure and heat, the most terrifying enemy for the engineering team was the pressure of water. This wasn't just any ordinary underground water, it was pressure that had been trapped for centuries. And if it suddenly burst out, it could rip through a concrete wall like a cannonball. These were the very reasons why renowned engineers from around the world had clearly stated from the start that this tunnel simply couldn't be built. They said that in such a long and hot tunnel, even the machines would give out. So how could the workers possibly survive? On top of that, the tunnels would be dug from both sides, covering a distance of 57 kilometers. If there was even a 1 millimeter misalignment, both teams would get lost in the darkness of the mountain, and millions of dollars would go to waste. But for Switzerland, this wasn't just a project, it was a matter of survival. Every year, thousands of trucks passed through the Alps, pollution was increasing, and the routes had already exceeded their limits. If this tunnel still wasn't built, the entire European trade system would have collapsed. Switzerland decided that no matter the cost, this would become the greatest marvel in the world. Now, the question wasn't whether the tunnel would be built or not. The question was how to face these challenges. On September 27, 1992, this project was officially approved. This wasn't just any ordinary tunnel. Its scale was beyond the limits of human imagination. The total length of the Gotthard Base Tunnel was set at 57 kilometers. That's like the distance from Delhi to Ghaziabad or from Lahore to Kasur. All that way, and inside a mountain 2.5 kilometers deep. But in the world of engineering, length isn't just a number. it shows how intense the challenge really is. The rule was, the longer the tunnel, the greater the risk of mistakes. Engineers had to start digging from both sides of the mountain, and both tunnels had to meet exactly at the center of the 57 kilometers. If there was even a 1 centimeter error in the calculations, the two tunnels would never meet each other. To solve this problem, calculations were done using laser navigation and GPS technology to determine exactly where to drill on both sides. To make this impossible task possible, the world's most advanced tunnel boring machines were built. These machines were so massive that their cutter heads were taller than a 2-story house. Speaking of total length, this TBM, which was named CC, was 450 meters long, almost half a kilometer. But even with such giant machines, they were only able to cut through a few meters of mountain each day. These weren't just machines. For the engineers, it was a test of patience that would last the next 17 years. Along with digging, another battle was being fought, the battle of removing the excavated rock. During the excavation of the Gotthard Base Tunnel, nearly 30 million tons of debris was taken out from the heart of the mountain. There was so much debris that if you piled it all in one place, you could build an entirely new mountain. Hundreds of trucks worked day and night just to haul this debris out. Every day, thousands of workers descended deep underground where there was no sense of day or night, no phone signal, and no fresh air. All that was there was the roar of machines, the damp smell of earth, and an underground world where, at any given time, 2,600 workers lived and worked. But soon, the engineers realized that their real enemy wasn't the length of the tunnel. When the excavation reached deep into the mountain, the engineers faced an enemy they had expected but weren't prepared for. 2 kilometers below the surface, the rocks of the mountain released their heat. As the machines moved forward, the temperature started to soar, first 30, then 40, and finally 50 degrees Celsius. This was no longer a construction site, it had become an oven. In the early days of the Gotthard Base Tunnel, when workers went down, they would be drenched in sweat within minutes. The machine operators were only given 2 to 3 hour shifts, otherwise the risk of heat stroke increased. To solve this problem, cooling pipes were installed, carrying cold water from outside the tunnel. This was the world's first construction site where the environment was created for the workers before construction began. Gradually, they realized that the heat was just the beginning. The real terror was the pressure of the mountain, testing them at every step. Cracks in the rocks, sudden collapses of boulders, these became everyday occurrences. To solve this, workers would immediately spray a mixture of concrete on those sections. In some places, precast concrete slabs were installed, and in others, steel rings were used to create an artificial skeleton. This provided support to the weak rocks inside. Now, the problem of falling rocks was solved, but ahead, the engineers faced a new danger. Not something solid like rocks, but something liquid. During boring, there came a time when a flood of water burst out from inside the mountains. The rocks inside the mountains aren't all the same. Some are extremely hard, while others are quite soft, and there are underground water reserves as well. Water is also stored in the cracks of the mountains, and because this water is under the weight of the mountain, its pressure can reach up to 2,900 psi. That's like putting the weight of a car on just 1 inch. The only way to solve this problem was to turn the water into a solid form. For this, before boring, small pipes were drilled and filled with freezing liquid. This process continued for several weeks, and finally, the mountain water froze and became solid. Now, if the TBM bores here, the frozen water would stay in place just like regular rock. After boring through the water-filled section, they would install a concrete lining and then turn off the freezer. But the engineers did one more thing. They left collection points between the tunnel's concrete slabs and the mountain so that water could pass through. This way, instead of putting pressure on the tunnel walls later, the water could flow out of the tunnel easily. After overcoming this final obstacle, there was only one thing left to wait for: the moment when both ends of the tunnel would finally meet. On October 15, 2010, the eyes of the whole world were fixed on Switzerland. Deep in the heart of the mountain, 2,500 meters below the ground, the teams coming from both sides were now separated by just a thin wall. Everyone had the same question on their minds. Would 17 years of hard work finally pay off, or would this 57-kilometer-long, multi-billion-dollar project become a graveyard? Suddenly, the giant cutter head of the CC machine broke through the final wall. This moment was it was a historic moment for all of Europe. When the calculations were checked, there was only a half-inch difference between the two tunnels. This level of accuracy was like threading a needle from 50 kilometers away. Up to this point, you might think that the biggest enemies were the rock and the water. But in reality, the biggest enemy here was not something else, but the air inside the tunnel. After construction was completed, when a high-speed train would rush into the Gotthard Base Tunnel, there would be no way for the air inside to escape. As a result, a shock wave would be created that could shatter the train's windows with a bang. Fortunately, this issue had already been anticipated. That's why not just one, but two tunnels were built here. Every few meters, passages were made between the two tunnels, and some ventilation shafts were also constructed to handle the air pressure created by the passing trains, so the shock wave could have a way to escape. But just imagine, if this unseen force hadn't been considered in advance, 17 years of hard work and billions of dollars would have gone up in smoke. The idea for the Gotthard Base Tunnel was first proposed in 1940. But due to engineering challenges, work on it only began in 1993. Its construction took 17 years, the blood and sweat of 2,600 workers, and cost $12.5 billion. The mountain above it is as tall as 3 Burj Khalifas stacked on top of each other. To keep the tunnels coming from both sides perfectly aligned, GPS, gyroscopes, and laser navigation were used. The Gotthard Base Tunnel is so long that its construction had to account for the curvature of the Earth. If you shaped all the debris excavated from the tunnel, you could build 5 Great Pyramids with it. But Switzerland used this debris to create small artificial islands in Lake Lucerne. The 450-meter-long CCTBM alone used as much electricity as 20,000 homes. At the end of this video, I want to pay tribute to the 9 heroic workers who, due to various accidents, were never able to come out from inside the mountain. In their memory, a memorial has been built at the tunnel entrance, so the world will always remember the true cost of this engineering marvel.
I hope you enjoy Tales Ilo videos and support them wholeheartedly by liking and sharing. Thank you so much for your love and wonderful comments. See you in the next amazing video.